Morning everyone, I'm William Baldwin, I'm the principal here at Basvic. I feel like I am fulfilling my dreams of being a TV presenter because it's like working in a TV studio right now. So welcome to people in front of me, which is Basvic student staff, and a warm welcome to visitors who have joined us today. And welcome to those who are joining us virtually from, I think, 14 different venues across 7 different campuses, all part of FE Sussex's work around the Local Skills Improvement Fund, which has provided these immersive spaces for all our colleges to work collaboratively to try and help meet the government's priorities in terms of collaborating on growth in the economy. As part of that, we've done a Festival of Careers where we've got some brilliant speakers in who appear virtually in one college and are beamed in to other colleges to share their experiences. Last week we had Norman Kirk, Fatboy Slim, who appeared at Varndine and was beamed in virtually to us. This week we're delighted to be the host, and we've got Chris Hogg with us. Chris is an entrepreneur, he's a storyteller, he's a social media storyteller. I'm interested to know what that means. He's a playwright, he's a general creative as well as a digital enthusiast, and I think what he's going to show us today is incredibly cutting edge, and I'm really looking forward to it. We also have people on YouTube watching live and Twitch, although I'm so old I don't even know what that is. Right, so you're not here to hear me. I think I've mentioned everything I should have. Chris, can we give you a warm welcome? Welcome to Basvic, welcome to the other colleges. Thank you for joining us.
Wow, this is amazing. So you are all, I think, possibly at the most important place you could possibly be at this moment in time, which is at the center of your education, right? There are the intelligence that's going to be co-created between you over the next couple of years or however long you're here is really going to be the foundation stones of all of your careers. And so I'm just going to do a kind of live and direct shout out to Lewis. Can I have a wave from Lewis? Yeah, thank you very much, Lewis. Can we have a shout? Can we say hello to Hayward Heath? Have a wave from Hayward Heath. Hello, Hayward Heath. Varndine. Wave from Varndine. Yay. And then Bexhill. Hello, Bexhill. Plumpton. Hello from Plumpton. Oh yeah, Plumpton. Thank you very much. And finally, Colliers. Hello, Colliers. Hello. Right. For the next half an hour, I'm going to take you on a journey. And the journey begins in January 2024. But before that, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. Hang on. Oh, I should turn it on. Wake up. What's it about? Oh, I teach here. This Harry Potter-esque university. It's called Royal Holloway. It's part of the University of London, but it's not in London, though it does have London campuses. And it's a great joy to work there. But it is the most flammable building in the whole of Europe, I'm told. And back in the 19th century, people still live in these kind of towers and stuff. That's pretty amazing. Back in the 19th century, if there was a fire, they would have to get these kind of tarpaulin tubes, and then that you would kind of get in your tube and then kind of have to just pray that it would slow you down enough to not die when you reach the bottom. But you know, it's an excellent place, and so they give me the opportunity to come and do things like this. So let's go back to January the 31st, 2024, and I'm teaching some students from the University of Nebraska. I'm talking about artificial intelligence, and I'm kind of like most people, Gen Xers who remember the first bit of the internet. We're very excited about this bit of, this technological advance. And what happened was that 3 students were just like, nah. We're not interested. We're out. And they left the room. And I'm a university lecturer, and I'm like, this is not what's supposed to happen. People are not supposed to leave the room. And I was like, well, what's wrong? Why are you going? And they were like, we don't want to learn about this. We're on our own journey. Why even learn stuff? They were demoralized. Why even learn stuff when you can press a button and suddenly something 10 times better than you could do just kind of pops up like a fruit machine? And so I kind of I was challenged by this, and I was like, well, what do I do about it? What do I do? And so I decided that I would try and go on a quest, and I would go and try and speak to people and try and find out something that might reassure these students about what was going to happen. So I'm going to take you through the beginning of that lecture that they kind of didn't like, okay? And so you can put yourself in their shoes. And at certain points, I'm going to ask what you think, what you believe, or what you hope, or what you want. And hopefully at the end of half an hour, there'll be some questions. And we may bring in some AI itself to kind of be part of this conversation. Because it is a conversation. And that's the joy about being in a situation, is that it's a conversation amongst 100 people. And another 100 people who are all around us in Sussex. So this is that journey. I didn't know what to say to those students then, but I do think I know what to say now. You'll be able to tell me if I'm right or wrong. So in 2022, it is as if an alien landed and disguised itself as a massive funfair ride in our world, an alien intelligence, something that we weren't quite used to. And I say it disguised itself as a funfair ride because it was kind of like there were so many cool things that you could do immediately. Make me an avocado chair, you could type into kind of DALL-E back in the day, and bang, a beautiful avocado chair would arrive. And it felt like magic, absolute magic. And everybody was invited. It was free. That was another, anybody could just have an account, still free. So it's like, come on, get on board, start using this kind of technology. And there were all kinds of strange things. I'm just trying to think, now we see so many odd things. Some are brilliant, some are terrible, but I've spoken to enough young people at Royal Holloway to know that we're entering the age of kind of maybe AI slop, just the stuff that just makes you feel a bit queasy every time you see it. I've even started noticing now that in order to distinguish against AI slop, people are putting the amount of time it's taken them to work on something at the bottom of their piece of work to prove that it kind of has that human value. So yeah, things are changing. There's all kind of strange people putting up all kind of strange stuff, mostly on X. I was like, I love this. This is so much fun. I've worked in technology. I've always loved technology. I've always loved creativity. Creativity in many ways is my religion. It's like I like making every day. I make every morning for 2 hours. I write, and then whatever anybody else wants, they can ask of me, because I've given my best, most creative hours to what I like doing. So I wrote a book called Nine Holidays I Wish I'd Never Been On, and there's one chapter called The 4 Yorkshire Terriers of My Apocalypse. Because at the age of 12 years old, I ran away from home, and I ended up living at my grandmother's house. And I knocked at the door, and there were her 4 Yorkshire Terriers and her, and she was like, why are you here? It's 11 o'clock. And I was like, I can never go home. I can't tell you why, but I can just never go home. And I never did. And she just shoved up the Yorkshire Terriers, and I just sat next to them. And I was, for about 5 years of my life, the 5th honorary Yorkshire Terrier in my world. So I loved it. I was like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to experiment. But you know what? I've been working in technology a long time. We'll go back to that little story in a second. But I've been working in technology a long time. And even though I was really excited, some of my students weren't. And I think that that's because, to some extent, might have been burnt by technology before. When the internet started, there was such excitement. Each one of you might have left college and made your own website on GeoCities or something like that. And the great excitement was that everybody's knowledge was going to be linked up in some kind of way. It was super creative and very fun and very, very utopian. But now I look at the internet and I see 5 platforms, and I see that it used to reward social media, for example, used to reward real people talking to real people. So it would notice 2 of you chatting about something, and then it would invite other people along to join the conversation. That's how the algorithm was plumbed in. But now it seems like on these 5 platforms, it is simply, how long can I keep somebody's eyeballs here? And it's kind of unethical, and it's kind of unfair. And when AI starts making automatic content, it's just going to be noise. And trying to find the human signal within that is going to be tricky. But that's kind of the point of this conversation that we're going to be having here. So we've been burned before, you know, in my view. So that maybe those students were quite right to not trust what was going on. And maybe, like those students, maybe it was going to kill creativity. Because, you know, if you're outsourcing your very creative desire, you know, that's not a good thing. My experience of the internet over the last 20 years is that it is this mixture of magic and loss. It offers you something magic, yet takes something away at the same time. And so the question in this new iteration is like, is the loss going to be, you know, is the loss going to be us? Is it going to be us? Are we going to lose something intrinsic about what we do, about what you're studying? Magic and loss. So what I tried to tell the students was like, maybe just think about, if you've been invited to a fun fair, maybe we can just extend that analogy a little bit, right? All of you will have gone to the end of Brighton Pier, or you've gone to Thorpe Park, or you'll have gone to some kind of Disney thing. And when you arrive at one of those places, you look around and you can go, right, well, I can go on that one because I quite like that one, but I don't like that one. I'm not going to go on that one. And what that is a description of is of you finding what's called your ludic limits, the limits of your play, the limits of what you feel ethically comfortable doing. And so that's what I think that I was advising the students back then, is that from Nebraska, is just like, find your ludic limits. What do you feel comfortable? Educate yourselves about what it is and see where you get to. So this is a definition of a ludic limit. The ludic limit refers to the boundaries or constraints with which you play or games operating. By establishing these parameters, ludic limits create a structured environment that makes play and games meaningful and enjoyable. You can have all of these slides afterwards if you want to go further into the ideas of ludic limits. I started playing with 9 Holidays again, and I got a 1986 version of the Argos catalogue, and I started putting them into Midjourney, and it suddenly started inventing metaverses of the 1980s that had never happened before. You know, there were like people that had kind of like failed to get into Star Wars for whatever reason. They'd failed the audition and they existed in this other universe. It was very exciting. It was creative. It was fun. And this is something I found from AI. If you bring in real world things into the systems, the results become very fresh, very interesting. Interesting is the wrong word. Very popping. Here we go. So where are we from an ethical perspective? This is where we are. To some, it's the biggest plagiarism machine that ever existed. Generative AI has just stolen everything, and that's exactly what people have done. They have scooped up the information. They've stolen all of Reddit. They've stolen all of YouTube, and they have grabbed it and put it into these latent spaces which we can then query and get stuff out of. Or it's the store of all human creativity, and there is a huge potential. And ultimately, it's kind of both, but how on earth do you navigate what to think when it's both things at the same time? I want to share with you my most favorite boring old slide, and it's this one here. This is the trust curve, right? And we are always on this trust curve about one thing or another. You know, whether you're dating or changing the entire structure of a department, everybody's involved with a trust curve. So you have kind of, you're completely unaware of what you're, you know, of your idea. Nobody knows it exists. To, I'm totally committed and buying in. So everybody here is on this trust curve when it comes to artificial intelligence, somewhere. So the first thing is you become aware of it, but you're confused by it. The second thing is that you understand it, but you're just like, oh no, I hate it. Then, you know, to some extent, between understanding and buying in, you're experimenting. You're trying to work out where it is, what it actually means to you. And finally, you either kind of you've really bought in, and suddenly you're marching to the beat of the new thing. So I'm just going to ask you, where do you think you are? Just as a show of hands. I'll try and keep an eye on the screens over there, but is anybody unaware of AI? No. Is anybody aware? Oh, a couple of people, thank you. Aware but confused. Yeah, did we get some confused hands? Cool. Aware but don't like it. Yeah, we've got probably about 25%, 20%? Yeah, I can see that as well. Okay, thank you. What about bought in, like it? We're getting slightly more. And then finally, totally committed, it's going to be my career. There's a few. But we can see we're all on this journey. And I've done this talk a few times, and what I find is that people have the need to talk about it, you know. So I'm going to jump somewhere else now. I want to warn you that we are now going to go to the land of the dead, right? I bet you weren't expecting that. So when I was trying to understand like what the students were concerned with, I started speaking to various people. I decided I was going to speak to a whole bunch of people. And one of those people is a playwright called Simon Stevens. And Simon Stevens, he's written 20 or 30 plays, and he's most famous for his adaptation of The Dog in the Nighttime, which was a very big West End hit. But he said, have a look at Roland Barthes. Roland Barthes was a French philosopher who died in 1980, and Roland Barthes was run over by a milk truck, sadly, you know. But just before he was run over by a milk truck, he wrote a book called The Camera Lucida. And in The Camera Lucida, he became obsessed with what these things called memento mori. Memento moris were the pictures that the Victorians took of their recently deceased relatives, making them seem alive again. So I'm going to show you one of those pictures. Just wanted to warn you. So this person is very unalive. The others are also, by this point, unalive, right? But Roland Barthes is like, why on earth are people taking pictures of the dead? And he's like, why? And he's like, oh, okay, I think I've seen this somewhere before. And he thinks, well, where have I seen it? He thinks, oh yeah, in the Greek tragedies, in the Greek epics. People are often going back to the land of the dead, standing in between the veil of the land and the living and the dead, and asking them questions. So he's like, well, maybe something similar is going on. And then Roland Barthes did a mental leap. He did this mental leap which goes, well, crikey, if the living are often going to the land of the dead to ask questions, maybe that's what's going on when you go and see a play. Maybe that's what's going on when you go and see a movie. Maybe that's what's going on here in one way or another. Let me explain a little bit further. What Simon Stevens meant was that if you could plug into the collective electricity of the questions running in your head, and as a writer, and you could take those questions and you could make a play out of them and put them on the stage, then you'd kind of create this kind of weird seance. So the actors are the ghosts. The audience is the land of the living. And there's a kind of question that's going on between the living and the dead. And a good playwright will ask the right questions. And the question that is being asked the whole time is always the same. How do we live now? That's all we want to know. That's all the plays that you ever see, all the films that you watch, somewhere deep down are answering a question. What do we do now about this life that we're living? So Simon Stevens thought that the theatre, the stage, was the ultimate tool for analysing artificial intelligence because it was actually a piece of Greek technology that was created in order to try and understand what it is even to be alive. A stage play and a life are bound by a beginning, a middle, and an end. So he's like, well, we've created this piece of technology for examining consciousness. You know, surely if you use live performance, it's going to tell you a little bit about the kind of the new age of AI. And so I was like, yes, that is interesting. Maybe I should try and create a live performance with artificial intelligence. So at the same time, I saw this video on YouTube, right? And this is from a moment in 1965 where Salvador Dali, the great surrealist painter, had been invited to the United Nations to give a talk about what it was to be Catalan. I'm partly Catalan, so I was kind of into this, but I'm going to play it for you. He's called Jose Reyes, greatest flamenco singer of the day. This guy to the right, you can't see him clearly, is called Manifest Plata, Little Silverhands. He was the greatest guitarist of the day. They're in the moment. He's being inspired. Okay. So I was like, okay, Simon Stevens says do a live performance. That's what happens if I replace Salvador Dali in a live experience with Dali, the kind of open AI painter. So I set up the Speakeasy and I got together a jazz band, some spoken word artists, and we put on this event. And what happened was this. You can see that on the big screen behind them, the AI is listening to the poetry. Cool experiment. But we had a big chat with the audience afterwards. And so this is the kind of stuff that we were kind of working out. So the first thing, the big difference was that Dali, Salvador, wanted to paint. He had the drive and desire to paint, whereas Dali, just a slave, does whatever it's been told or programmed to do. There was a delay in between the words going to the open API, the Dali API, and then coming back with an image that it interpreted. And so we kind of concluded that maybe AI was never going to be in the same reality as us. It's always going to be an alien intelligence. It's never going to be a competitor in the classic sense. It's going to be something different. Now, do you remember I talked about Manitas de Plata and Jose Reyes? Now, weirdly, those two married and they had children, right? And those children formed a band called the Gypsy Kings. And so they're playing in Brighton in 2026. Go and see them. It's wild. You'll have the backstory to that. But maybe creativity, maybe has to go out into the world to have any kind of meaning. So their creativity went into the world and is now 2 generations down, still creating. I thought maybe this would reassure the students that, you know, the slave is never going to, you know, Dali, is the AI, is never going to have that drive into the real world. I also realized that I was kind of lacking the vocabulary to talk about some of these changes. And so I kind of thought, right, well, who is my favorite kind of guitarist? And maybe I could do an experiment with, I've done an experiment with words, maybe I could do an experiment with sound. And so this is one of my favorite guitar solos of all time. Eddie Van Halen. I was like, okay, I'm going to see if I can recreate that with AI. So I went on a system called Udio, and this is what happens if you say, could you please make me an Eddie Van Halen riff? It kind of is an Eddie Van Halen riff, but it's not an Eddie Van Halen riff. And I was like, well, maybe it's kind of like somewhere between like a drum and a drum machine. How can I describe that? We do lack the words for, like, sometimes all of you will have had the experience of going into AI and having a really uncanny experience of like, oh, that's a bit too intelligent, or that's picked up something that it shouldn't have picked up on, or, you know, we lack the words of something being half alive or half conscious, these kind of feelings, they're new. But then when I was thinking about how that Eddie Van Halen riff was created, it's created by putting all the Eddie Van Halen riffs together. And so ultimately, it is the average of all Eddie Van Halen riffs. That's where it comes from. The images are always going to be the average. The music is always going to be the average. And I was like, well, maybe that will reassure the students that, in fact, their own creativity is always going to have like a much more superior value because it's just always going to trot out the average. And you are above average. But we are now entering the age of industrial AI, and I'm sure you've seen movies where where dead actors are brought back to life as if they're alive. You know, there's no, you know, it happens all the time. So capitalism loves to remove humans from the performance in order to make it compatible with industry. And so those students did have a sense of danger that maybe they were going to be replaced. The next person I spoke to on my quest was Eli Islami, the head of Google DeepMind. And I said to Eli, I said, these students left my class, what should I have said to them? And he said, looked thoughtfully and he said, well, you know what, it's just like photography. Photography, kind of like everything just, you know, it kind of upset it upset the cart, but everything just shuffled across and we had a new kind of spectrum of the arts. Didn't stop people painting, didn't stop people doing watercolors. It just changed things a little bit. Didn't feel quite satisfying for me. I was just like, well, no, it's a bit more than that, surely, because of the profundity. Like we've never, you know, photography didn't take away the desire. Oh. Afraid it's frozen for a moment. So the next person I spoke to was one of my favorite people in the world. His name is Dr. Takeo Higuchi. He works at the University of Tokyo. And in 1985, he was working in Saudi Arabia in a really, really boring job in a compound with his family. It's baking hot. And this company magazine comes around and it says, you can win a trip around the world if you can design us a new valve. And so that's what he does. He sits down every single morning and he just starts getting a notebook and sketching. He doesn't know anything about valves. He's just part of the sales team. Starts sketching, starts teaching himself, starts sketching. Fast forward 6 months, he hands in his designs and it is chosen from all the different applicants, and him and his family are no longer in the compound. They're flying around the world. He decided from that point that he would try and write down as many possible ideas every single day. Every single day he would write down his ideas. And when he came to stay with me in London about 4 years ago, he would sit for 2 hours. He even had a little computer around his neck that had like on wires, on coat hangers. And at the bus stop, he'd be typing ideas. At the desk, he'd be typing ideas. He came up with 50 brand new ideas a day. And so fast forward, he now has 580 notebooks. He reckons that he will have had 590,000 ideas by January 2025, and he will have his millionth idea on his 104th birthday. He has had 12 patents. He has had 18 books, and he's even analysed exactly what proportion of his ideas have been good. And it's 0.03, because those are the ones that have done something to his life or made him some money. So I asked him, Takeo, what could you do to reassure the students? Oh, sorry, before I forget, he also reckons that because he's mapped all his ideas, he's created a map of his brain, of his interests, which is an interesting concept of itself. So I said, Takeo, what do I tell the students? And so I interviewed him, and this is his message to you, the most creative man I've ever met. You just wave for Takio goodbye. Bye, Takio. Takio. He's coming to Brighton in July, so you may meet him. You never know. Okay, so thanks, Takio. So he's saying get more creative, and he's saying also, he doesn't say it in this video, but keep your best ideas. He said keep your best ideas out of it. Keep your best ideas for your notebook, because who knows what's happening to the questions that you're answering. They're being sent out and then being analysed, and then they're into the system. I then went back to, there's a great Woody Allen film called Annie Hall, one of the best, where he brings in this guy here, and this guy is called Marshall McLuhan, and Marshall McLuhan was very famous in the 1960s for writing a book called The Medium is the Message, which in a sense says that every technology has kind of baked within it a set of assumptions and a set of ideas that govern the kind of stories that you can tell with it. And so he's got some little known essays in the 80s which are called the media tetrad, right? And the media tetrad is just his way of understanding what happens when a new technology arrives in your world. He says that part of the media tetrad was it will enhance something, it will cancel something, it will bring something back from the ancient past, and it will become so successful that it will have negative flip-out consequences. So this felt for me a good framework for thinking about the technology changes that are going to come into our world. And so I started just trying to think it through. So what abilities will be enhanced? Ability to make art and iterate art design quickly. The ability to make a film is going to speed up. Wow. It will automate mundane tasks, specifically when you get these things called AI agents, which are kind of like chatbots that have given a certain amount of autonomy. It will ease the first few steps into any learning journey. When we're starting something new, what we really want is a little tip that makes us think that we can do something when we've only just started, so that the learning journey feels so much less daunting. It's just that little thing, like using butter to make the perfect omelette, for example. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, it's going to help that. It will enhance the skills we have, and this is the danger, right? And this is what I think unconsciously the students were thinking of when they walked out, which is this. It can enhance the skills you've got, but if you don't have the skills in the first place, you're always going to be hitting that button and getting the average, and that's not what you're about. That's not going to push things forward. You want to be above average if you possibly can. So if you don't have the skills, that's the danger, that you're never going to get to that elevated level of craftsmanship. Also, the worlds of AR and VR, like AI is going to revolutionize our ability to use these technologies, because normally it takes 15 people to make one ice cream in VR. It can do it with a breath. So what will become obsolete? Creative friction. Chatting to each other. I don't need anybody to make a movie. I can just do it in my bedroom. Digital design and coding. Coding is changing. People are making websites like through the viping process, where you're just kind of like iterating with AI, going backwards and forwards and having a website that's brilliant. So social collaboration and serendipity. Believe it or not, when I was younger in the early 80s, there weren't gyms, so to speak. There were weightlifting places, but there was none, the David Lloyd didn't exist. And so what there was there were exercise classes like Kalinetics, and my mum would go, and she would go and do some exercises with some friends, and then go upstairs, and there'd be a political meeting upstairs. And so you can imagine that people were developing and collaborating. There was friction, and there was ideas, and things were changing, and it was revolutionary. But suddenly, a gym now, it's just you against the machine, backwards and forwards. It may seem fun, but you're like, it's a privatized experience. There's no kind of collective growth in that. So maybe something similar would happen. What will it bring back from the ancient past? So, as I said before, human craftsmanship will seem to be more valuable. Some of the tools that I was using in the AI experiments are being used in hospices to help families make final memories together. That's an interesting thing. It's helping Alzheimer's patients to kind of solidify aspects of their memory. I'm a writer, I'm always going to say this, but the power of words. And there'll be new types of performance, as we saw. So what's going to be the negative flip-outs? Loss of meaning in art, AI slop. Over-reliance on AI. More contactless product, loss of originality. Bad art, fake information, and going back to students, demoralization. What will it bring back from the ancient past? And this is kind of like one of my conclusions. I'm heading towards the end now, last couple of minutes. But The words abracadabra means as I create as I speak. Our ancient ancestors had a relationship with words that was palpable. They had spells, they had incantations, and they thought that they had real power. What you're going to see in a moment is that these words, your words again, are going to start having real power. We are in the age of conjuring, and this is the age that you're about to walk into, where you'll be talking to computers, where you'll be talking to the world around you, and your words will have like a magical effect on stuff. That's new. That's powerful. That means your words, your kind of energy is going to have more outlets. So I conclude. So I've got a little picture of Superman here. Now, Superman in 1936 came out in 1936, and he was adored by the American GIs going to fight in the Second World War. They were 19 years old, and they really loved reading about a guy who was good in his heart but could withstand bullets. And that's the one thing they needed more than anything. We need to be able to withstand some bullets of Nazi Germany. So, but then in the late 30s, he couldn't fly. By the way, he couldn't fly at this point. He could only leap. But then in the late 30s, the American trains started to be able to go 140 miles an hour. And that was huge. And so we're like, well, Superman needs to be able to compete with the trains. And so that's kind of what I kind of figure that we're kind of also kind of edging towards an age where we have this AI. It'll either be a god, a monster, or some kind of helper slave kind of creature. And the question is, what are we going to become with this second intelligence that is also part of our world? Are we going to have to advance? Are we going to have to evolve more quickly? These are all great questions. So just to go back to the ultimate question, after having gone on this journey, what I would advise, or what I've come to the conclusion, is that the biggest difference between generative AI and your creativity is drive, desire, is literally the word I want. So as well as writing gratitude lists to make yourself feel happy, do what Takeo Higuchi does. I challenge you. Sit down one morning and just write the words I want and finish that sentence 50 times. If you do that for a week, you're going to map your desire. If you do that for a month, you're going to get some energy to actually make some of those things come true. So that's it. That's the ultimate thing that I believe, that the question is, what do you want to become in the age of AI? Thank you very much for your time and energy and listening. You've been very good. Thank you. And I just want to say that I may sound like I know all the answers. I really do not know all the answers. You know, together we know all the answers, but this is just my take on it at this moment in time. What I'm going to do is going to turn the screen on, and I'm going to turn the AI on, and it's going to listen to this Q&A and paint it live. How do you feel about that? So, also, we were going to ask, does anybody want to kind of just come up? You don't have to, but does anybody have any like spoken word or words that they have themselves that they would kind of like to kind of potentially speak and have the AI paint on their behalf? I'll leave that to hang for a second. Anybody in any of the classrooms want to kind of put in some of their own words? You could put it in the chat maybe, and somebody could speak it in the room. We knew that this moment might be, I'm going to give it like just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Luckily, we do have someone. Yes, who do we have? Hello.
Well, I've written a haiku, which I've never ever done before.
Excellent. That's brilliant. Do you want to come and stand just a little bit closer to the computer and see what the haiku, what it does?
So is it James? James, put you on the mic, yeah. Is it rolling?
So let me just turn the screen around slightly so that. Ooh, what's happened there? Let's not move the screen around a little bit, all right?
So okay, is that working?
Yeah.
Okay, so the haiku is: plastic synthetic, a creator without soul,
Conjurer's soul leaps.
That's very nice. You want to say that one again?
Plastic synthetic, a creator without soul. Conjurer's soul leaps.
That's very good. Thank you very much.
All right.
It will see. It takes about 30 seconds for it to start coming back with stuff. Does anybody? I'll do another one. There was a baboon who one afternoon said, "I think I'll fly to the sun." So with two great palms strapped to his arms, he started his takeoff run. Mile after mile, he galloped in style, but never once left the ground. "You're running too slow," said a passing crow. "Try reaching the speed of sound." So he put on a spurt. By God, how it hurt! The soles of his feet caught fire, and there were great clouds of steam as he ran through a stream. But he still didn't get any higher. What do we have here? A person sees, it's kind of uncannily picking up at what's happening in the room. It's trying to work out what's going on. So it's trying to paint that who I am. Hello, hi. It's my anima. Cool. In the meantime, does anybody have any questions about? Does anybody have any questions at all? Oh, this is your haiku. Create an image of a spirit-like form leaping from the synthetic landscape with a futuristic city background. Essence of creativity emerging from the artificial in a neo-futurist style. So it's listening to the words and then trying to create its own artistic style to represent that.
It's got quite a sort of sci-fi bent to it, isn't it?
Yes, we can change it to being whatever art style we want to if we're interested. So yes. So let me ask you, do any of you in the room have any questions about your relationship with artificial intelligence? Or any questions? Hello, hi.
Can we get the mic over there? Who's the question?
Say who you are.
Talking to that mic. Hello, Dan Warman from Tech Native, and also work on the local skills improvement plan.
Yes.
Super interesting, and I'm really interested from a skills perspective, the impact of AI. Trying to sort of form the question because I've got so many.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of my concerns is how this is speeding everything up, and everyone's going to become super caffeinated by AI. That you'll both be able to produce things really quickly, but you're also going to be expected to produce things really quickly.
Industrial creativity, exactly.
And at what point does this stop? Where, let's talk about a client provider relationship. At what point do they say, "I want this now"? And if you sort of feed that back into a sort of skills perspective, how are we going to differentiate ourselves when we can all produce something of extraordinary high quality in 2 seconds flat? What's going to be the differentiator between someone who's great at what is going to be great? What does that mean anymore? And how are we going to differentiate ourselves in this age?
I'm going to split those questions up slightly in my head. So the first one is about skills. And so, yeah, you can pull the lever and it's like a fruit machine and you get the bits that you like and you get a good immediate result, but it's never what you want. And so to actually get what you really want, that takes hours and days, and you're still putting it into Photoshop. You're still putting it into all the other tools. So yeah, good immediate result to kind of think about things, but the quality is still, you still need to have skills in order to make it any kind of copy. And there was an AI conference last week in Brighton. It was like the AI Film Awards kind of thing. And that's, if you speak to the people there, that's it. They're like, you know, I can do special effects that would have cost me £100,000 before, but it's still taking me the same amount of time to actually get something that people aren't going to just get weirded out at when they see it on a screen. So that's the first question. There was another part of that.
What's going to differentiate? If we think about what should we?
Yeah. No, I agree. What's going to differentiate? So
Great
I mean,
and good.
I think if we were to look at AR and VR as an example, is spending 8 hours creating a texture what an artist wants to do necessarily? And I would say to some extent, no. So like, I think that there is room for it to really help artists free up some of the more boring things that they do in terms of like, certainly in the screen industries, you know. So yeah, thank you very much for your question. I don't know if I've answered completely, but I've tried. Yes. Question. Yeah.
I'm Callum.
Hello, Callum.
I want to ask, what do you think the future is for people who've spent like years developing skills in like coding, graphics, when, you know, you can just type it on your computer now and get results within seconds?
I agree. But okay, let's think about this. So let's look at the example of a video game, right? So presently, somebody designing a video game would spend hours on every single tiny element, from a tree to, you know, to a bench or whatever. Like, that would take individual crafting of those moments. And I think that that's where the value lies in terms of automation, in those elements that people are only just going to see fragmentary, like for a millisecond potentially in a game. Whereas the main characters, nobody's going to want AI to do those. They're going to want real people to spend time. The things that have meaning is going to be, I believe, would be, so there's going to be some bits that are going to get automated, but the real craft will remain the same, I truly believe.
The bits that people spend hours on, it requires hundreds of people possibly, and maybe there just won't be a use for those people when AI takes over. What happens to them?
I suspect there's going to be a lot of anger. You know, it's like the times when a shoemaker used to be able to make 12 shoes in a day, right, if they worked really hard. Then suddenly a machine comes along that can make 1,200 in an hour, you know, and there were riots. So, you know, but it's not necessarily something that people think about nowadays. So I think there's going to be some anger, and quite rightly so. There should be some anger, and there should be this conversation. Like, everybody needs and wants to talk about it because it arrived. It's here. We have to kind of like work out how we can make it work for us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. Are there any questions in from some of the other colleges? Hello, Lewis. Hello, Lewis. How you doing?
The question's in the chat. Can you hear me?
If you can read.
But the question was, what can't AI do now that you'd really love it to be able to do?
I'm sorry that there was a little.
What is it missing that would be really brilliant?
Wow, that's a really, really wonderful question. I think what's weirdly, I think that what I'm interested in seeing is the kind of art that we haven't even thought of, and I think that that's definitely going to challenge, you know, that's going to challenge us to think about our own art in a way. So I think that's an odd answer to your very, very good question, but it's like, I want to see I want the possibilities to unfold in a way. It's a good question.
We have a question from Hastings.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Hastings. Is it in the chat, or we just...
Let me read their question out. So, Hastings are, will AI ever be creator of us?
Will the AI ever be creator of us? So that's a. I'm going to interpret that question as in, will the power relationship, the creative power relationship, be where we are in a subservient position? This is again a fascinating subject. I've seen over the last year some things that have never been seen before. So to answer your question, I've seen architects screw up a piece of paper, throw it on the floor, have a picture taken of it. That's given to AI, which is then the AI has designed a building that resembles that kind of crunched up piece of paper. They've then taken some of the elements of that building and taken them to real craftspeople, you know, so stonemasons and kind of all kinds of builders. And so ultimately, like, you've got buildings that have never been seen before in reality. And so that's an example of, like, I think the ultimate state of co-creation, where ideas are moving backwards and forwards from like the digital realm into the real realm. And I think everybody not everybody, but I think that there is a certain amount of originality that's going to come, and we're going to see it on our streets. So to answer your question, do I think it will be, hopefully it will be a co-creator, and we will always be creating co-intelligence.
We have Hayward Heath next.
Hello, Hayward Heath. Nice to see you.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect.
Do you think the creative courses like fine art will be obsolete in a few years due to AI art?
I absolutely do not think that's going to be the case at all. I think you might actually find it to be the opposite, as where people feel the urge to define themselves through human creative craftsmanship as a differentiator of the quality of their thought and their, and their desire and their drive. I think that creativity is always going to be part of the real world, if you know what I mean. And so when we looked at Manitas de Plata and the whole analogy of the Gypsy Kings, their music goes into the world and does something. The students in a fine art class are always going to be a part of that creativity where their art goes into the world and does something, whereas I don't think AI on itself can do that or ever will.
Thank you.
Back to the room. Do we have any questions in the room? Yes. And let me just, if you say your name and your question.
Hi, I'm Zach, and
Hello,
I'm
Zach.
wondering your opinions on the more ethical side. With AI, there's a lot of accusations of plagiarism or theft, and obviously there's a lot of unsung artists that go into every image you've generated.
A huge crime has taken place. Let's not have any bones about it. All of your YouTube videos, they're being scooped up, and they're now in Google's VO or whatever it's called. It has happened, but the attitude, the platform society in which you live, it's like, let's just take and let's get sued later on. And certainly if you're a creative agency making AI movies, one of the insurances you have to take out is IP insurance, so that if at a future point somebody comes and sues you for having used some of these tools, you're covered. And Adobe, who, I don't know if you use Adobe tools here, but they're obviously huge kind of multinational creative toolkit. If you make stuff with their AI stuff, that comes automatically with IP insurance. So I think there's been a bank job of creativity, and it's so annoying. In terms of ethics around sustainability, a lot of all the stuff, all our interfaces, all our GPTs, they're all going to America or data centers, probably in Europe now. I'm not 100% certain, but places where I teach, like Royal Holloway, they're not allowed, certain departments are not allowed to use GPT whatsoever, not for plagiarism, but they just don't know what's going to happen to the information. And so what that means is they're having localized installation of what are called 4090 chips. So these are the NVIDIA chips that are kind of that can be used locally on a computer, and that uses far less energy than this backwards and forwards going to these huge data centers in America. So I do see localized installations being one of the solutions to this ethical horror bag. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Zach. So I think we have a question from Plumpton. Our last question, Chris, from Plumpton.
Thank you.
Plumpton, can we get through to you?
Hello, Plumpton. How you doing?
Hi, Chris. Performance has been a key theme of your talk today, and in relation to Goffman's theory of dramaturgy, where we are players, how passive as players and audiences are we becoming in response to AI, in your opinion?
Okay, so I'm not 100% certain of the theory of dramaturgy. The way I understand dramaturgy, it's the 1,000 questions that somebody asks in order to make a text accessible to a modern audience. Is that your understanding of dramaturgy in this sense?
More in the sense that we are all players on a stage, we all play roles, etc. How active are we in those roles in response to AI, and then how passive active are we now as audiences?
I've never once believed that the idea of passive audiences. Even if we're watching television, we can change channels, and often we do when we're made angry. I think that capitalism places us into roles, and I suppose the question is, does AI kind of enhance that process or make it are we more free? I do certainly think that having an AI in your pocket, which we'll all have very, very soon, is going to have a remarkable effect on places where I live, like in Whitehawk, where it's like, education has been problematic. And so in certain respects for certain people, and having something you can speak to and get answers to, it's like having the Citizens Advice Bureau there full time, all the time, and it's going to be incredibly empowering for people that haven't had that good relationship with education. So in that respect, I believe that it will make us less passive. And certainly my experience at university is some of the, like when students are co-creating with AI, the level of their responses is going through the roof, whether that means that they are taking all that information on board or it's kind of like the frictionless means it isn't necessarily going in. I'm not 100% certain. But I can tell you one final thing, which is when in Italy they banned ChatGPT because they just had some kind of problem with it. And I think all the coders had been using it relentlessly in order to speed up their process of what they were making. And suddenly it was gone. And they said it took 12 weeks for the coders to return to their original level of skills. So they had those skills to fall back on. And so I don't think there's ever going to be a place where you don't have to have those skills, to go back to your question earlier on. Thank you very much.
Fascinating. A last thought from me is that in the world of education, I don't want to ever get to a place where we've got students creating work by AI and then teachers going, I'm going to get AI to mark this work, because actually we're social creatures as humans, and social learning, I think as COVID taught us, is a key part of the learning process. And I don't think AI is ever going to take that away. Would you agree?
I totally agree. I think, like, humans are only humans when they're in the presence of other humans. And so if we're not in the presence of other humans, we're going to lose something.
I love that. That's profound. We're only human when we're in the presence of other humans. A great place to end it. Absolutely fascinating talk. I was really interested in the interface, not between real and fake with AI, but between life and death. I think you opened up a different way of thinking about it there. And my top tip to students is definitely do some journaling. I took up journaling a few years ago. It is absolutely brilliant in terms of trying to organize your thoughts and look back on what is a constant theme in what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah.
I still don't know what I want to do, and that helps me try and pursue that. So a massive round of applause for Chris. We really thank you for your time. And thanks for your engagement with questions.
Thank you very much.
Particularly out in the provinces. Before we wrap up today's event, we've got a couple of minutes, so I'm going to hand over to Zoe, who's going to tell us about a brand new app. Remember, this is the Festival of Careers. This is about getting you thinking about your future career and what you may do one day. And we have a new app, don't we, Zoe?
Yes, we do.
Hang on, get the mic.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, blimey. Sorry. Right. Thank you. I was just thinking of ways how to link into Chris's talk, and I must admit, one of my favourite quotes for AI is, I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do art and writing, not for AI to do my art and writing so that I can do my laundry and dishes. So that's what I think definitely is part of it. But anyway, I'm here to talk to you about an app. It doesn't currently have AI on it, but it's a job matching app that is being rolled out to all of the colleges that are partaking here today. BASVIC, I know you guys are going to be receiving it and hearing about it in about a week, but lots of the other colleges have launched it already. So it's lots of really unique things about it. One of the key things is that it's all about it being Sussex, so it's only Sussex employers that are involved, and it's also about every opportunity. So we've got part-time work, we've got apprenticeships, careers, volunteering, and it's all about sort of finding opportunities within your local area. So whether you're going on to uni later or whether you're going to start a career or an apprenticeship afterwards, you can find it all on the app. There's lots of great features on it, so you can build your profile and then it creates a CV for you. You have a personality test on there that gives you that extra insight. You can get career support through your college on the app as well. And there's lots of other really unique things. There's also a match your skills. So when you put in what skills and what experience and qualifications you have, when you look for a job, it will tell you how much of a match you are to that job. So it just really helps sort of indicate where you are on your career journey. So please download it. I'm going to leave that QR code on there. So if you've all got your phones on you, if you could try to scan it, that will take you to the website, it'll take you to the links, or you can go to your app stores and just search landed jobs, and you'll be able to kind of download, explore it. I would ask if you could try and use your college email accounts, just so we sort of know where you're all coming from. That'd be great. But have a little play. All your colleges will be talking to you about it too, and enjoy all the rest of these events. Thank you.